Okay, so number 6, condemnation provisions. Get into it.
Sure. So every lease is different. So it's really important to look at the exact language in the lease. But every lease will have a condemnation provision, and it's important to note that that restaurant operators were not shut down because of the virus. They were shut down because the government told us to shut down. Now, I think a lot of operators would have shut down whether the government told them to or not. But luckily, the government did tell us to. So that, in essence, could be considered a regulatory taking. So you no longer have the right to operate in the premises because the government told you can't do it. And that's essentially what a condemnation is. Now, obviously, unprecedented times, this has never been litigated before. Who knows what a court is going to decide? But if you were to argue in court that you're not in default because the government told you can't operate and it's a temporary condemnation, that you shouldn't have to pay rent because almost every lease has a condemnation provision that says that if there's a taking by the government of the premises, you don't have to pay rent anymore, then that's some leverage for a tenant to use to try to get their landlord to be reasonable. And for those landlords that have a national footprint, it's a very strong argument, a very scary argument, because if it's adopted in one jurisdiction, then it's likely to be adopted in other jurisdictions. And if it ever gets litigated, it could impact hundreds of properties for national landlords.
Got you. Beautiful. Okay, so that was condemnation provisions. Anything else to unpack regarding that before we move on to number 7?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Just a rent abatement based on the amount of square footage you're able to use, and in a lot of our leases we negotiate it's based on the lost sales. So I guess I did have a little bit more to unpack there for you. I apologize, but so it's proportionate.
I don't know when you're done. I don't know if there's
neither do I. So if your lease is like ours, where the condemnation and the casualty provisions are tied to our prior sales, where my operators are doing 10% of what they normally did, now their rent obligations will go down to 10%.
Got you. Okay, so I think we can sew that one up.
If you enjoyed this video, please help us out. You can do it by liking, sharing, subscribing, and hitting that bell icon. It really helps out. And don't forget, there's a complete archive of every episode with show notes at restaurantunstoppable.com.